Hello and welcome to the Golden Playbook. We have made it through week 14. We have hit the fantasy playoff season. If you are with us this far, I imagine you made your fantasy playoffs or you're just a diehard fan of the show. Either way, I appreciate and applaud you. Today we are going to be breaking down every game recap style like we've been doing all season long. See what our major takeaways is. Obviously, it's crunch time for fantasy. See if there's any key waiver wire pickups heading into the playoffs, some notable injuries to talk about, all that jazz we'll get into today. If you are not already subscribed to the channel, please make sure you do so down below. Really do appreciate it. Let's head to that first game, a 37-9 Seahawks victory over the Falcons. And my Seahawks just continue to get it done, mostly on the defensive side of things, but the offense came to play a little bit, especially in the second half. It was tied 6-6 at halftime, and the Seahawks really pulled away in that second half thanks to Sam Darnold and JSN, as it has been all season long. 7 for 92 and 2 touchdowns out of Jackson Smith-Njigba. He is going to be, he has been a league winner up to this point, and he's going to continue to do so moving forward. This was Rashid Shaheed's best game as a Seahawk, 4 for 67, and had the kickoff return for a touchdown. Hopefully he can get going as that secondary option. Cooper Kupp scored a touchdown. Obviously, he's not really playable on a week-to-week basis just because he's not getting the target share that he would need to produce. On the ground game, disappointing all around. Charbonnet was the most efficient back. Kenneth Walker obviously didn't get it going in this one. And you're going to be hard-pressed to find me, recommending starting these running backs on a week-to-week basis. It's just very obviously a 50-50 split. Charbonnet gets the goal line carries when they're down there. Kenneth Walker has a nice role in the passing game typically, but it is just too much of a split to get a nice fantasy RB out of the situation, especially in games like this where they are not too efficient on the ground. But Sam Darnold, very solid streaming start, and JSN obviously getting it done every single week for your team. On the Falcons side of things, obviously it is, not good since Drake London's been out, since Michael Penix has been out. And just to amplify it, you're facing one of the best defenses in the league in Seattle. And it showed. Kirk Cousins, 2 interceptions, just really couldn't get it going. Kyle Pitts has been pretty steady, a 6 for 90 game, leading the team with 10 targets. I think Kyle Pitts is definitely a starting tight end for fantasy moving forward. Even when Drake London comes back, nobody has really stepped up. Darnell Mooney has been very, very disappointing, 1 for 6 in this game. So I think even when Drake London is back, which hopefully is this week, Kyle Pitts is still a very good start. Bijan Robinson, 86 yards on 20 carries on the ground. Not really getting involved in the pass game, which is just mind-boggling to me, especially with Drake London out. You would think he would get your playmaker the ball any way possible. Definitely a down game for Bijan. He's a guy who would definitely benefit from Drake London being back. I think he'll bounce back just fine for the fantasy playoffs if you made it this far. Unfortunately, this is just not how the Atlanta offense was supposed to look heading into the season. Next up, a 34-10 Dolphins beatdown of the Jets. And it wasn't super pretty on the Dolphins side. They kind of got out early and then coasted to the victory. As you can see, Devon Achane did get banged up in this game. Kind of came home before that even happened with 92 yards and a touchdown. But only 7 carries in this one. Got banged up with a rib injury. Coach McDaniel said if he needed to come back into the game, he could have. So I expect him to not miss any time. But it is notable to see that Jalen Wright was the biggest beneficiary of this. It was no longer Ollie Gordon as the RB2. Wright overtook him. So even though we're not expecting it, if for some reason Achane does miss, Jalen Wright would be an absolute must-add, must-start player heading into next week. He had 107 and a touchdown, so very solid out of Jalen Wright. Through the air, Jalen Waddle, 5 for 50 and a touchdown. Really has just gotten it done more weeks than not since Tyreek has been injured. He is a great wide receiver to start week in and week out. I think he's going to be just fine for the fantasy playoffs, despite Tua still not looking very good. 13 for 21, 127. Obviously, he didn't need to do much in this game, but it just does not look super pretty from Tua Tagovailoa. On the Jets side, Tyrod Taylor got injured very early in this game, unfortunately, which led to undrafted rookie Brady Cook, finishing out most of this game, and he did not look pretty. Took 6 sacks, 2 interceptions. Obviously not great. We are expecting Adonai Mitchell, or at least I was, to kind of continue his mojo from week 13. Only 1 catch on 6 targets. Obviously, the quarterback change did not help his status. One thing I will note, Mason Taylor was heavily targeted by Cook. So if it is Cook who goes next week, Mason Taylor could be a decent streaming tight end. Breece Hall obviously did not get it going on the ground in this one and was non-used in the receiving game, which is something to note. If Brady Cook goes, maybe he does not check down to the running back nearly as much. This Jets team is just obviously in shambles. Their lone touchdown coming on a punt return. The one thing I will say, if Brady Cook starts next week, the defense facing the Jets would be a very good start. 6 sacks, 2 picks, only 10 points given up. Obviously a great result from a defense. So if Brady Cook goes, look out for the defense playing the Jets. Next up, a 27-22 Steelers win over the Ravens. And Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf got the job done. 7 for 148 for DK Metcalf. And I know I've been saying pretty much all year I only want the running backs from this team. And they both had another very solid game. Both guys scoring a touchdown. Both guys getting used in the receiving game very heavily. I honestly think both guys are low-end RB2s at this point. Matchup dependent. They're both getting optimally used, both getting receptions, both scoring touchdowns. As crazy as it sounds, I think you can get Jaylen Warren and Kenny Gainwell in your lineups and feel okay about it in your RB2 position. Despite DK's huge game, I am not reliant on him moving forward. He has had plenty of 3 for 36s this season, and just because of one spike game, I would not expect that moving forward. On the Ravens side of things, I continue to say it week in and week out, Lamar does not look like himself. I don't know if he's still banged up. I don't know if he just got rusty or if he's been missing too many practices. He can't get a flow. But Lamar really, really does not look good right now. And it's really dragging the whole team down. Zay Flowers, though, finally had a good game. 8 for 124. If the Ravens are going to find themselves in these battles where they're behind, Zay Flowers might be a very solid start when they have to play catch-up. Isaiah Likely is a very good play. 4 for 25 and a touchdown, and dropped another touchdown, which could have been a huge game. I think Isaiah Likely is very worthy of a start. Derrick Henry, 94 yards on 25 carries on the ground. Just is not getting in the end zone right now, so he's not really coming home for fantasy purposes. Obviously, you like to see his usage. I will note Keaton Mitchell did get banged up in this game, so if that's the case, I think Derrick Henry is just going to be a bell cow moving forward because Justice Hill is already injured. I think Derrick Henry's time is coming. I think he's absolutely due for a big cold weather game coming up, so keep an eye out on Derrick Henry. Next up, a 24-20 Saints win over the Buccaneers, and the Buccaneers are very clearly in shambles. They are in an absolute slide right now. At one time, I thought they were going to be an easy playoff team, but now they are on the outside looking in. Starting on the Saints side of things, rookie Devin Neal is taking full advantage of his opportunities. 70 yards and a touchdown on 19 carries on the ground. Also got a reception through the air. So a very solid game from the young rookie. I think he is a viable RB2 option. Tyler Shuck with a very solid game for himself. 55 yards and 2 scores on the ground. Showing a little bit of athleticism maybe we didn't realize he had, which obviously gives major upside. I talked about pretty much all offseason. QB rushing is huge for their upside. So even though he didn't really get it done, passing 144 yards and a pick, adding that 55 yards and 2 scores, it's obviously massive for Tyler Shuck. Very disappointing game out of Chris Olave, 3 for 30. Juwan Johnson, 4 for 38, continues to be a good tight end option. I know this was a quiet game, but he is used every week. And Devon Bailey has kind of been that receiver who steps up. I'm not really itching to get him into my starting lineup, but I think he's definitely worth a roster spot for the remaining weeks of the season. On the Buccaneers side of things, Bucky Irving is back, but is definitely in a split with Rachaad White and Sean Tucker. All 3 guys saw at least 7+ carries. Sean Tucker got the touchdown. The one thing that is nice about Bucky, he is still being used in the receiving game. 2 for 26 and a score. You absolutely love to see it for Bucky Irving. I think his role is only going to get bigger as he kind of ramps back up. Through the air, Emeka Egbuka has obviously been very, very underwhelming. 2 catches on 9 targets, and he has been wildly inefficient the last 5-6 weeks of the season. Obviously came out of the gates very hot, but he has very much slowed down. He's a guy I no longer need to get in my starting lineup. Obviously, if you made it this far, you probably don't have a ton of better options, but he is definitely not a guy I need to get in my lineup by any means. Godwin has kind of come back and assumed a very strong role. 5 for 55 on 8 targets. I think he's going to be a fine start as well. And obviously, we know Baker is not at 100%, and it is showing. The shoulder injury, maybe whatever else he is banged up with, is definitely affecting his accuracy, and he's just not being the Baker Mayfield that we saw at the end of last season. So all in all, this Bucs offense, although it has some decent pieces, I'm not screaming to play any of them, except for Bucky Irving. He is definitely a must start moving forward. And the next game, a 36-19 Jags win over the Colts, and just an absolute massive AFC South battle. Obviously, story of the game, Daniel Jones leaves with the Achilles injury, knocking him out for the season, which is really bad for the Colts and their playoff hopes. There's obviously a good chance they can still make the playoffs in the wild card, but they're going to have to do it with Riley Leonard at quarterback. So not great at all. On the Jacksonville side of things, Liam Cohen continues to have this offense pretty much firing on all cylinders, as well as you can with the way Trevor Lawrence is playing, which is not all that great. He does come home with the numbers, 244 and 2 touchdowns. Just doesn't look, top-notch by any means. Travis Etienne, 74 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Obviously, he has full reins on this backfield right now. Bashal Tutin has really been not involved over the last couple weeks. Travis Etienne is a very good running back start for the remainder of the season. Jacoby Myers is very clearly Trevor Lawrence's favorite new target. 4 for 39 and a touchdown on 10 targets. He's going to be a must-start wide receiver down the stretch. Much like Brian Thomas was must-start down the stretch last year, I think Jacoby Myers is going to be your guy this year. And it's actually helped Brian Thomas Jr. a little bit, kind of freeing him up to run some of those deeper routes that he did so well in his rookie season. Tim Patrick, 5 for 78 and a touchdown. I wouldn't look too much into that. He is their third receiver right now, but once Parker Washington gets back, Tim Patrick will kind of go on the back burner. Brenton Strange, a quiet 3 for 27, but I still think he's a focal point of this offense, and he is a good tight end start on most weeks moving forward. On the Colts side of things, obviously no Daniel Jones, so Riley Leonard. His favorite target when he came into the game was very clearly Michael Pittman Jr., 9 for 79 on 12 targets. Alec Pierce, another solid game, 5 for 80. I think both of those guys are very solid starts moving forward. Tyler Warren, a quiet 2 for 15. Wasn't really involved once Riley Leonard got in the game, so that's something to keep an eye out. Maybe he is not Riley's guy. And Riley Leonard got a rushing score in this game. And Riley Leonard was a guy in college that did use his legs a lot, had a lot of rushing scores. So I think he actually provides a decent bit of upside just with his legs. So he's an interesting guy. I'm not jumping at the bit to start Riley Leonard, but I think he delivers a little bit of rushing upside that is definitely interesting at the least. Next up, a surprise shootout, 31-29 Titans win over the Browns. And this was a Tony Pollard takeover. 161 and 2 scores on the ground. And honestly, the offensive line hadn't played this well all season long. Tony Pollard was absolutely running wild. You absolutely love to see it for Tony Pollard. But with that being said, I'm still not jumping at the bit to start any of these Tennessee Titans players, even Tony Pollard. I think the odds that this was kind of a one-off boom game for Tony Pollard are much higher than this being kind of the story for the rest of the season, although he has looked better than Tyjae Spears. Spears has definitely been the third down back, had a little bit of usage in the receiving game, but Tony Pollard, very good game, still not wanting to start any of these Tennessee Titans. On the Browns side of things, Shedeur Sanders had a very good statistic game, 364 and 3 scores, adding a rushing score for 29 yards. Very solid stuff out of Shedeur in, kind of a come-from-behind fashion. He has been named the starter for the remainder of the season. So obviously this is probably his ceiling if I had to guess. But I think he is a decent starter. If you're in a super flex, maybe as your quarterback too, I definitely think he is interesting. Harold Fannin has very much benefited from Sanders. 8 for 114 and a touchdown in this game. He is a must start at tight end for the remainder. 3 for 76 and a touchdown out of Jerry Jeudy. I'm still not starting Jerry Jeudy. I don't care what he does. He is a no start for me. Quinshon Judkins could not get anything going on the ground. Tennessee Titans run defense is actually pretty good. stymied Judkins in this game. He did have one catch for 58 yards, which helped save his fantasy day a little bit. But like I mentioned, Judkins is a touchdown-dependent back. If he does not score, likelihood he is not coming home for fantasy purposes. I don't think he is a must-start by any means. In fact, if you have other options, drop them down in the comments below, and I will tell you whether I prefer Judkins or the other player. Next up, a 31-0 Vikings win over the Commanders. JJ McCarthy had a decent game in this one, 163 and 3 passing touchdowns. But with all that being said, none of our receiving options really came home. All of the touchdowns went to the tight ends. Jordan Addison had a fine 4 for 62, but Justin Jefferson had 2 for 11 on 4 targets. This is obviously not the same Justin Jefferson in years past. I don't think it's anything to do with him. Obviously, much more to do with the quarterback position. But Justin Jefferson is definitely a guy you do not have to have in your starting lineup. Obviously, you probably don't have better options, but we have to look at the facts at this point. Justin Jefferson is not in a position for fantasy success. Aaron Jones continues to run the ball well in this one. Unfortunately, he is in that split backfield with Jordan Mason, who also ran well and scored a touchdown in this game. I think it's going to be a pretty 50-50 split moving forward. I think Aaron Jones is definitely playable in your RB2 slot just because he's typically more involved in the passing game than Jordan Mason. Didn't come to fruition in this one, but I think Aaron Jones is a fine RB2 start moving forward. On the Washington side of things, obviously just ugly stuff. Jaden Daniels was not playing very well and then got injured in that second half, re-injured his elbow. I highly doubt he'll play next week. If I was the Commanders, I would be shutting him down for the season. Just not good stuff. And the Vikings defense is pretty underrated in my opinion. I think they can throw a lot of things at you. Makes for a tough time for opposing offenses. At this point, I would not be looking to start any of the Washington players. Although Zach Ertz did tear his ACL in this game, which could open things up for Deebo Samuel or Terry McLaurin over the middle. So on a full week with Mariota as the starter, I think those guys are viable flex options, but I'm not seeing them as anything more. The target share does get more condensed with Ertz being out, but still just not jumping at the bit to start these Washington guys. I think their team is pretty defeated as a whole. Not to mention their defense is very, very bad. So opposing offenses can absolutely take advantage. We'll have to see if the Commanders use that to their advantage for fantasy purposes, playing catch up, much like the Cardinals do on a week-to-week basis, or if they kind of mail it in as a team. If they do the former option, McLaurin and Samuel could have some decent value down the stretch, but did not show any life in this one. Next up, a 39-34 shootout. Bills over the Bengals, and this was, a fantasy masterclass out of Josh Allen. 251 and 3 through the air, 78 yards and a touchdown on the ground. This is why you spent that high draft capital on him for boom weeks like this. Absolutely masterful stuff. James Cook, 80 yards on 18 carries, adding some receiving game. Like I've been mentioning, it's good that he's getting that receiving work, adds a little cherry on top. Didn't score any touchdowns in this one, so it killed his ceiling a little bit, but you love to see that receiving work. And the trend continues to target the tight end going against that Cincinnati defense. Dawson Knox, 6 for 93. Dalton Kincaid, 4 for 41 and a touchdown. Bengals continue to be abysmal. Going against the tight end, it really hasn't mattered who that tight end is. So next week, find the tight end playing Cincinnati, and you'll probably have good luck with that. Outside of that, I say it every week, but Buffalo just spreads the ball around to too many guys to really find a consistent receiving option on the Buffalo side. It's really Josh Allen, James Cook, and Dalton Kincaid can get there on most weeks. For the Bengals side of things, Burrow, 284, 4 touchdowns, 2 picks, had some absolutely masterful throws and some boneheaded interceptions. T. Higgins benefited the most, 6 for 92 and 2 touchdowns on 11 targets. The Bills were definitely trying to take away Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow had no problem going to Higgins and Mike Gesicki, 6 for 86 and a touchdown for him. Jamar, 5 for 44. I think he's going to bounce back in a big way this next week. I think Cincinnati's still going to fight, even though they're probably out of the playoff contention. I think they're going to do so. Chase Brown, 2 touchdowns in this game and was very, very close to a third. He's not getting it done efficiency-wise, but he keeps finding a way to score fantasy points, so I can't see how you can keep him out of your lineups. I think Burrow, Chase, Higgins, Jamar Chase, I think all of these guys are very solid fantasy options down the stretch. Next up, a 24-17 Broncos win over the Las Vegas Raiders. Bo Nix, a ho-hum 212 passing yards and 15 yards in the score on the ground. So has a decent fantasy day, nothing spectacular. Not throwing the ball down the field very much whatsoever. A couple things to note, RJ Harvey definitely going to be a league winner. 75 yards in the score on the ground, adding 6 for 25 through the air. He is an absolute smash RB start since J.K. Dobbins has been out of the lineup. Cortland Sutton, a solid 6 for 62 on 10 targets. Finally showed to be the alpha dog in this receiving room again. It had been a few weeks. We'll see if Sutton continues to heat up down the stretch. And one other thing to note, Troy Franklin has been slowly losing snaps to rookie Pat Bryant. I don't think Troy Franklin is playable whatsoever at this point, and I think Pat Bryant definitely worth a roster spot. If you're in a pinch, you could start him. He's become the wide receiver 2 in the last couple of weeks. But definitely Troy Franklin is a non-start at this point, losing his job to Pat Bryant. On the Raiders side of things, Geno got banged up in this one. So Kenny Pickett came in, played decently. Obviously, we know that Raiders O-line has been struggling, especially when you go against the Denver Broncos D-line. It's not going to be pretty. 4 sacks combined, and Genty averaged 3 yards a carry. One good thing, no other running back recorded a rush, so they want to get Ashton Genty involved. Got 2 receptions in this game, had been more involved in the receiving game in weeks past. So I think Ashton Genty is still a fine running back start. Bowers, 4 for 46 and a touchdown. You're obviously starting him every week. But outside of that, there's really no Raiders I'm looking to start. I have to imagine it'll be Kenny Pickett starting next week. But whether it's Geno or Pickett, Genty and Bowers are really your only options down the stretch. Next up, a 28-21 Packers win over the Bears. Jordan Love continues to get the job done, as well as Josh Jacobs. 86 yards and a touchdown for Mr. Jacobs, adding a couple of receptions. Jaden Reed was back off of IR, and Matthew Golden played in this game. The pecking order was still Christian Watson at the top, 4 for 89 and 2 scores. He is darn near a must start at this point. Jaden Reed, 4 for 31, definitely got his feet wet. He's an okay flex start in my opinion. Outside of that, you're not really looking at any valuable pieces. Romeo Doubs, 2 targets. Matthew Golden did not really run very many routes. So this is another team like the Bills who really spreads out their targets. In my opinion, Christian Watson is definitely a start. Jaden Reed, maybe. Outside of that, I'm not looking to start any of these Green Bay receivers on a week-to-week basis. Josh Jacobs continues to dominate the ground, 86 yards and a touchdown. He's an obvious must start. Moving forward, on the Bears side of things, they're continuing to try to get the ball going on the ground with these running backs, Swift and Monangai, and they had an okay job of it. This was the first game with no Roma Dunze. Biggest beneficiary was Luther Burden, 4 for 67 on 6 targets, and he was basically a full-time player. I think Luther Burden is definitely a startable receiver moving forward. I've definitely noticed Caleb Williams has a very tough time in the colder weather. Ironic playing in Chicago, but if it's cold weather game, Caleb Williams is not looking that great throwing the football. DJ Moore, 1 catch for -4 yards. You cannot start him at this point. You can't even really roster him, but I think the rookies Burden and Loveland definitely are benefiting from Roma Dunze's absence. I think you could start these guys in your flex and your tight end spot and feel decent about it. Swift and Monangai is a little bit tougher. You know they're going to split roles now. It's kind of about who gets the touchdowns, who gets the receptions. I feel okay starting these guys, but it's just hard to know who's going to get the hot hand on a given day. Next up, a 45-17 Rams win over the Cardinals. And the Cardinals are just, a garbage time killer right now. They keep getting way behind because their defense is horrible, and then Jacoby Brissett and the boys are not giving up, and they keep putting up numbers in garbage time. The Rams, however, just continue to dominate on offense. If you look at everywhere, people are getting it done. Stafford, 281, 3 touchdowns. You know he's gunning for some records. He's going to continue to put up these numbers. Puka, 7 for 167 and 2 touchdowns. Absolutely dominating. I've said in weeks past a little bit, Colby Parkinson, 3 for 32 and a score. You can definitely do worse at tight end. Ever since Higbee has gone on IR, he's been a solid receiving option in the tight end slot. Devontae Adams, the lone guy who had a quiet game, 4 for 29. He's due for 2 touchdowns next week. He's definitely back in the lineup. On the ground, Corum and Williams are in a dead split right now. Corum 128 and 2 touchdowns. Kyren 84 yards and 1 touchdown. You're still starting Kyren Williams, obviously. He's got you this far, continues to score. But Corum's definitely a guy you need to have on the roster. In fact, I think you can play him as an RB2 or a flex option if need be. I think he's shown that he's going to get the work, and he's been very, very efficient doing so. I would not be opposed to playing Blake Corum if needed. On the Cardinals side, no Marvin Harrison Jr., which is resulting directly in Michael Wilson going off. 11 for 142 and 2 touchdowns. He has been absolutely dominant when Marv doesn't play. If we'll have to wait to see for next week. If Marv plays, Michael Wilson, you're still probably trotting him out in your flex, but you're not feeling nearly as good if Marv is out. Michael Wilson has been dominating. Trey McBride, 5 for 58. Definitely a little bit quieter, but Trey McBride's going to get it done for you. And like I've said, nobody doing it on the ground for Arizona. Their defense is horrible. It is just a perfect recipe for Jacoby Brissett and these couple of receiving options to just go nuclear. I think Brissett is startable. Wilson, obviously, and Trey McBride definitely going to be in your starting lineups. If Marvin Harrison Jr. plays, it does muddy the waters a little bit, but I still like these receiving options very much. And finally, the Sunday night game, 20-10, Texans over the Chiefs. And these are two defenses that are definitely dominant, especially the Texans defense. I've been harping on it for weeks. If you can avoid playing guys against Houston, I would do so. And I would not want to see the Houston Texans in the playoffs. That defense is so dominant on all levels. But as far as their offense, Stroud, not a pretty game by any means, but he gets the job done. 203 and a touchdown. You're probably not wanting to start him for fantasy purposes, but he's at least letting guys like Nico Collins get it done. 4 for 121. Woody Marks comes home thanks to the receiving touchdown, although he's been very inefficient on the ground. Nick Chubb did get banged up in this game and left midway through, so that would just mean even more carries for Woody Marks. 26 of them in this game. Like I said, not super efficient, but that kind of workload deserves to be in our starting lineups. Jaden Higgins, kind of a quiet 3 for 34, but he has definitely been the number 2 wide receiver for the Houston Texans. Schultz is an okay tight end start. On the Chiefs side, obviously not very good. Even Rashee Rice had a quiet 4 for 34. Nobody came home. Tough game. I don't think the Chiefs are going to fight. They technically still have a chance to make the playoffs, but I think Rice, Kelsey might have something to prove down the stretch. Mahomes is never going to give up. As crazy as it sounds, I think the Chiefs' weapons are very, very live to be, winners down the stretch for your fantasy teams. On the ground, Kareem Hunt continues to score touchdowns, help save the day, but I'm not feeling super good about having him as my starting running back now that Pacheco is back taking some of those carries away. Last up, we have a 22-19 Chargers win over the Eagles, an overtime victory for the Chargers, and this was a defensive battle. 7 sacks for Philly on Justin Herbert, who played through a broken hand. Jalen Hurts had 4 interceptions and a fumble. Defenses were flying around in this game. And with that being said, not many fantasy players came home in this one. Herbert ran for 66 yards with the broken hand, which is very impressive, but did not have a good game passing. He was under duress all night long, resulting in really no good games for his receivers. Amarian Hampton was back in this game, 56 yards on the ground and a receiving score. I think he's only going to ramp up as the fantasy playoffs go on. He's going to be a very solid RB start. Ladd, QJ, Keenan Allen, Gadsden, all very underwhelming games. Just Philly's defense could not let Herbert get anything going. They're very dearly missing their O-lineman, Joe Alt, and Rashawn Slater for that matter. They are banged up on the O-line, and it is starting to show, although I think a lot of these guys are going to be valuable down the stretch for your fantasy playoffs. Herbert is an absolute warrior, battling through that hand injury. Got to give him his props. On the Eagles side of things, absolutely a disasterful game for Jalen Hurts. The 4 interceptions, like I mentioned, but just wasn't getting it done whatsoever. He's not rushing very much, so he's not giving you that added value. Saquon Barkley had his first big game of the season, really. Broke off a 52-yard touchdown, 122 yards on 20 carries. Finally got a boom Saquon game. Hopefully you started him. Even after all this time, Saquon still got it done. A.J. Brown, 6 for 100, another 100-yard receiving game. He's coming into form. It's not always pretty, but he's getting it done. Goddard, 8 for 78, acted as a security blanket in this game. And Devontae Smith was kind of the lone guy out. 4 for 37 on 8 targets, just could not connect in this one. This Philly offense has looked off all season long. I imagine they're going to fire their offensive coordinator at some point. It's just not pretty whatsoever, but they do have some easy matchups down the stretch. So hopefully it can be some get-right spots for the Eagles and your fantasy pieces. Overall, a defensive battle did not come home much for fantasy purposes. And that is going to wrap up our Week 14 recap. We are now into the fantasy playoffs, making that push to win your leagues. I wish everyone the best of luck. Make sure to smash that subscribe button down below. Hit the like button while you're down there. Really do appreciate all the love and support. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.